we jamming. Tell my neighbor come over. He telling me load of music. He telling me that's ain't right. The neighborhood quiet as ever. No problems to sleep at night. I tell him I love me soca. The music hot like a true love. Bring your body, come on out here. Move your body just like you don't care. We jamming it so sweet. Feel the rhythm, feel the heat. Bring your waist from walk to the soca. All our ways just jam together. I tell him it's so sweet. Feel the rhythm, feel the heat. And bring your waist from walk to the soca. All our ways just jam together. I tell him it's so nice. Change your mind and don't think twice. I tell him it's so nice.
Greetings, greetings, greetings and salutations one and all. Welcome, 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 welcome to the night shift. It's Tuesday night. It's the night we do a thing we call Healthy Love. I want to say welcome to each and every one, those locked in on TuneIn Radio, the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. Across the pond on One Harmony Radio, top of the morning to you guys over there in the UK. Big ups to King Genius, Queen Genius, and the crew. I want to say big ups to those who are tuned in to WGLRO, the People Station, home of the Don and Walker Morning Show, taking you from the sheets to the streets. They touch you if you are in Detroit or in Denmark and every point in between. I'll say big ups to those on PEMGTV.com. And of course, right here at the home of the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew, KevinStew.com. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you. Couldn't do it without you, and you have my word. I wouldn't even try. The sound of Shelly Sweet Shells. The track is called My Neighbor.
Problems to sleep at night. I tell him I love me soca. The music hot like a true love. Bring your body, come on out here. Move your body just like you don't care. We jamming it so sweet. Feel the rhythm, feel the heat. Bring your waist from walk to the soca. All our ways just jam together. I tell him it's so sweet. Feel the rhythm, feel the heat. And bring your waist from walk to the soca. All our ways just jam together. I tell him it's so nice. Change your mind and don't think twice. I tell him it's so nice. He moving the whole crowd, singing soca loud and loud. It's my neighbor, no control. He said he just can't do that. He never hear music, so I tell him that's how we do it. Bring up what's on there, let's ride. It's a love effect in all night. Come join and feel the vibe. I tell him just come over, enjoy yourself, no pressure. We jamming it so sweet. Feel the rhythm, feel the heat. Bring your waist, come walk to the soca. All of we just jam together. I tell him it's so nice. Change your mind and don't think twice. I tell him it's so nice. Be moving the whole crowd, singing soca loud and loud. It's my neighbor, no control. The music pumping big time, and woman taking small wine. Oh yeah, we in the street, but we
want to say thanks to Policy Media Group for sponsoring this segment of the show.
Yes, my neighbor.
When being in a moment is priceless, you want to give them a call. What can they do for you? They can provide everything that you see right here on kevinstew.com. The streaming services, websites, as in building and hosting. They can create a site for you. They can host a site for you. They can be there to help you give your live event streaming services. Yep. Give them a call, 754-999-6020. You can also visit them at paulcmg.com. I have become familiar with him recently when I shared a video on my social media. Tonight you get to hear live and direct from this gentleman who, talking to him has been somewhat of a life enhancing experience for me. And I have the privilege of sharing that experience with each and every one of you. All my family members, my night shift family members, and those who are new to the night shift. And I get to say welcome to you at this point. Now, without further ado, I present to you the one and only.
That's funny.
He laughs. The one and only, ladies and gentlemen, Mataka Askari. Welcome, 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 bro.
Thank you, brother, and thank you for this great opportunity to be able to share what I think is some vital information that, when properly understood, can help us go about the process of people who are recently released from prison. If we apply this information, we can help people who will re-enter society from prison make a more successful transition. That's the aim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the aim.
You know, as a bit of an introduction,
Sure.
please let us know who Mataka is and where you're coming from. What has led you to this point to be able to expertly share of this experience?
So my birth name is not Mataka Askari. My birth name was Michael Eames. If we have, through the course of the conversation, I would like to explain how Mataka Askari became my name. No,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up there. And I'm from the north side of the city, and anybody who knows anything about St. Louis or any of the inner cities, the conditions in them, in a lot of cases, are not favorable to producing a healthy mindset. We have guns, we have violence, we have drugs, we have all those negative things that make up an unhealthy concoction, and a lot of us are heavily influenced by these things. And so even when we talk about post-incarceration syndrome and the trauma that's incurred in prison and how it drives our behavior after we get out of prison, there was a trauma that existed or that occurred prior to me going to prison. And so, like, the trauma that I incurred in prison was trauma that was added on top of trauma, because trauma was the pathway that led me to prison in the first place.
Right.
And so when we begin to understand all the traumas that interplay and interrelate in our community, You can find basic information on trauma on anywhere on the internet, anywhere, YouTube, anywhere. However, when we deal with I think I would like to say 4 or 5 main points of trauma when we deal with complex trauma, which is the multiple traumas as they interact simultaneously to drive a person's behavior in such a way that they so deeply woven together in a tapestry that it's hard to identify the thread that is the primary driver of the traumatic behavior. That's complex trauma. And then we have sanctuary trauma, which is the trauma that is that comes as a result of us supposedly being in a safe place, and we get violated and betrayed in that place in a way where it teaches us to never be trustful of people or places again. When you get violated in a church, when you're at home and you suffer neglect or abuse from somebody who is supposed to be your primary caretaker. And when we begin to understand that type of trauma, we can see how that occurs as a result of being impoverished. And with that poverty comes stress. With that stress comes unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? And we never have an opportunity to be able to process through that stuff in a healthy way. So we just internalize all of it. And out of that unhealthy internalization of those negative things, it produces that volatile and violent thing in our environment. And so even with sanctuary trauma and with complex trauma, and then one of the traumas that a lot of people don't deal with, brother, and we have to deal with this. So we live in a time now where the situation is so crucial. So we can't afford to ignore nothing in the name of political correctness. Like political correctness is a charade that disallows us to delve off into the depths of the things that we need to delve off into so we can extract up out of it the proper information to develop the right healing approach. And so cultural trauma.
Wait, hold on. Say that again. What political correctness is?
Political correctness is a facade. It's a facade that disallows us to delve off into the depths of the things that we need to extract the proper information to create the right healing approach. We don't want to offend nobody. We don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. Listen, man, that's the wrong approach to take right now. Man, we've been in this place and it's been offending people and hurting people's feelings for too long. And so for us, since its inception, and so for us to be able to get to a better place, we have to deal with that. And we have to make moves to make sure that we understand that in the proper context so that as we move forward with the right understanding, we don't want to allow that stuff to happen again so that we can continue business as usual in the name of anything, right? Because that's recurring trauma. And so when we talk about trauma, right, when we talk about cultural trauma, it's, for me and from where I come from, one of the main things that people hate dealing with because it rubs people the wrong way is we got to talk about the impact of racism. And when we start talking about cultural trauma, then we have to start talking about multi-generational and transgenerational trauma as it has impacted our people and driven our behavior and created these toxic environments that you see right now that produce the pathway to prison where we incur the trauma in prison. So it didn't start in prison. It didn't start in prison. Let me tell you something. Raul Nefer Ahmed said something in his book, The Afrocentric Guide to a Spiritual Union. He said, if I was a marine biologist and you brought me a fish from a particular area that was dead, and I dissected the fish to ascertain what killed the fish, right? But I couldn't come to a conclusion. And you bring me a fish from that same area and another fish from that same area. Sooner or later, I'm going to have to start testing the water that the fish swimming in, the environment.
Yes.
The environment, brother. So let's ask ourselves, right, how did we get to this environment? How do we get to a place of unhealthiness, right, when we have external forces that have acted upon us? Because all this is a result of external forces that have acted upon us.
Right.
Stripped away the culture, stripped away the identity, psychologically reduced us and imposed upon us a sense of identity impairment, prevented us from moving forward, and created economic issues that have disallowed us to escape poverty. And so when we look at all these things as they interplay, and then it creates this volatile and toxic environment, and then out of that environment, people who have never had the ability to learn healthy, positive coping skills, who ain't never had no therapist to be able to help them get through that, right? And who have never had healthy outlets and constructive guidance that would allow them to transform their condition. It sets the stage for people to act in a way without the understanding that people will misperceive as naturally criminal. And so when you have a society that has labeled people like that, not understanding what's going on. And then you have a pathway born from the trauma of transgenerational cultural trauma, complex trauma, as it has impacted us socially, right? As it has impacted our intimate relationships, as it has impacted our financial status, as it has impacted everything about us, right? So this is the pathway to prison. So trauma, the post-incarceration syndrome, right, and the trauma that's incurred there that drives behavior for people who struggle with post-incarceration syndrome or institutional syndrome when they get out, man, 99.9% of the time that trauma didn't start in prison. Trauma led them to experience more trauma in prison, which led to the post-incarceration trauma. That's what led to the post-incarceration syndrome trauma. So we're going to have to start talking about what happened before, right? We're going to have to start what happened before. So now they have these new models and these new approaches. And it's all happening because you have these drugs, right, that are impacting these suburban communities and people pulling out all the stops to be able to try to address these issues. So when I grew up in the 90s and the 80s, when them drugs hit our community, it was a criminal justice issue. That's why they called it substance abuse. That's why they called it that. So anything that has an abuse to it carries a negative connotation, right? So you got spousal abuse. That's a crime. You got animal abuse. That's a crime. You got child abuse. That's a crime. So the term drug abuse has a criminal justice connotation to it. But when they shifted the paradigm because it started impacting a certain sector of the community, it went from drug abuse, or it went to from a criminal justice issue to substance use disorder and a mental health and public health issue. So they ain't gonna punish them like they punished us. And with that paradigm shift, there has been unprecedented studies on how trauma impacts people and how it drives behavior. And with this new information, it's allowing us to understand how trauma can alter your DNA on a biological level, cellular corruption, brother. How it alters your brain. And so when you have people who have experienced transgenerational trauma, and not just people who have experienced trauma as a result of slavery, but people who come from poor situations, people who come from situations where their fathers or their parents struggle with substance use disorder in the form of alcoholism, and they grew up in these toxic environments. We're talking about people who have operated with trauma, not even knowing it, and they have normalized it. And so when this becomes the play, right, people don't even know what it is that is driving their behavior. There is no ability to identify it. And people who on the outside looking in, not understanding it, making judgment calls. And as the sister Joy DeGrue say, now in 2020, it's our culture. Like it's our culture to be in a state of destruction. Man, we operate by a collective dysfunction that's born from trauma. So that, with this trauma-informed care information, we're starting to get new insight into how trauma it's more than just a mental thing. It's more than just a mental illness. It alters the biological makeup of your physical being. And so just imagine people who have sustained trauma, right? Your great-great-great-great-grandfather, how that impacted how he raised the people who succeeded him, and then they succeeded them. And so without no treatment, any illness, any virus that is left unchecked metastasizes and spreads. And so if it's left unchecked, the threat is that it takes over everything and ultimately moves to destroy the host that is residing in it. And that's what's happening to us. And so there has never been any treatment, any correction, or anything. And so it's out of that toxicity, right, that we act. And it is out of those actions that we make decisions that lead us to these courthouses. And it is in these courthouses that we get sentenced to prison. And it is in prison where we experience a more intense form of trauma like that on a daily level. It's a reason, brother. Yeah. Let me be clear. It's a reason that the 13th Amendment, right, likened physical slavery to prison. It's a reason. It's a reason why slavery, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist in the United States except by where a person has been convicted of a felony. Because the plantation and the mistreatment, the trauma, the identity impairment by stripping your identity and then giving you a name and then exposing you to harsh conditions and not allowing you the experiences to be able to mature, because knowledge, information ain't the only thing that mature you. Man, you have to go through some stuff. And so when you are in an environment where you have suppression of lifestyle choices, where you're exposed to violence, not just from COs or not just from staff, but from the people who you locked up with. And you know that you have to be in a position of survival all the time, because you can be inadvertently drawn up in something and your life can be in danger. And so you have to live on guard in a state of hypervigilance. And so let's look at hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is the belief that there is always an impending doom about to occur.
Right.
AKA an inability to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. That's a bit the person who is considered to be paranoid.
Absolutely. But they call it hypervigilance.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens, right? What happens when you live in this environment for 5, for 10, for 15 years? Now, this is just regular prison population. We ain't talking about solitary confinement, right? Where you have rare human contact, you locked in the cell, and you have sensory deprivation. We ain't even talking about that. Like, that's mental illness on a whole nother level, right? Prolonged periods in solitary confinement when everybody knows that we social creatures by nature.
Right.
And so when you got dudes they in the hole 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then when they come out, their behavior seems strange because they have not had meaningful human interaction, right? And when they come out, they seem weird and they don't know how to act. They've been re-socialized and reprogrammed as a result of that long stay in solitary confinement. And so when we look at all of the things that we experience, especially the violence, right? So you have a form, as I said, so you split between two realities. And let me just break it down to you.
Mm-hmm.
You have a way that you interact with your fellow prison population, and then you have a way that you interact with the prison staff. So let's just keep it real, because the only way that we can arrive at the proper destination to be able to get the right information is to tell the truth, brother. And so, like, when you got dudes in prison, man, like, if a situation jump, you say something disrespectful, I'm willing to take your life about that. But in some cases, you got the people in prison, right, who are the staff members who operate in a disrespectful manner, right? And then we lower our heads and we turn away in shame without saying anything. And so because I recognize them as a superior force, I take what they do to degrade and dehumanize me. And I internalize that because I ain't got no healthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
And then when somebody who is in a situation similar to me say something crazy, my outburst of anger is so extreme because he looked at me. And I bust his head wide open. People wondering, like, damn, what happened? Why did it cause that? And so when you have this type of person living in this type of environment, in a penitentiary mindset, because they had to survive and they got to learn how to deal with these things that they experience, right? And they internalize it because they don't have no healthy coping mechanisms or healthy outlets. And they want to just be able to navigate through it the best they can so that they can get free. Man, that means they take a lot of stuff and they got a lot of stuff on the inside.
Right.
And when they leave prison, that stuff that's on the inside of their bodies and their minds is with them. Plus, you're still in your prison mindset.
See,
you ain't had nowhere to decompress.
That's just it right there. That point. When individuals go through something in a setting like that which you have described about prison, and they get out, they're led to the gate with whatever it is that they have in hand, and that gate is shut behind them. That is how I see it happening. Was that how it happened for you?
So I had a support mechanism. Let me be clear. So I'm from St. Louis, but I came to Columbia. So I had Erica Dixon and her sons waiting on me when I got out, and they were a good support mechanism. So let me just say, for me personally, right, I had a good support mechanism. Brother, let me tell you something, man. I was on my pathway to studying when I was in prison. So I had realized, right, that I had internalized some unhealthy ideas and images about myself because somebody taught me that the only people that have ever contributed anything significant to the world didn't look like me. Christopher Columbus discovered America. Louis Pasteur learned how to make milk right. Everybody else except me. So when I looked around to try to find somebody like me who had done something significant, I couldn't find nobody. And even when I went to church and I was trying to worship God, I found somebody that didn't look like me.
Yeah.
Didn't look like me, brother. And so just imagine how this impacts the self-esteem self-esteem, right, of a person who is trying to find their way in the world and establish their identity, but they don't have anybody to model themselves after. And when you look at divine power, you see a particular people. When you look at political power, economic power, social power, you see a particular people. So the mindset becomes, if I want to succeed, if I want to do great things, then the only way I'm going to do like that is to be exactly like them, the best way that I can be. That means I can't truly be me. So I have to desire to be something other than myself. And what you do is you start internalizing images about yourself. Look, my hair too nappy. I got to get something done to it. My skin too dark. That's undesirable, so I'm ugly. My nose too big. That's not the way it looks. That's not how it's supposed to be, so I got to do something about it. Look, and so when we start internalizing these unhealthy ideas and images about ourselves, this is a form of trauma too.
Right.
But let me tell you, for me, right, while I was in prison, the first thing that transformed my life and started to bend the corner for me, helped me bend the corner, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. So, brother, let me be clear. So Amos Wilson, Malcolm X, Raul Nefer Almond, Joy DeGruy, so many other people and so many books that I've read, Asa Hilliard, John Henry Clark, Chancellor Williams, all of these people who, Naeem Akbar, Wade Nobles, Jacob Carruthers, all of these books, Francis Cress Welsing, all of these books that I had read, all of these things that I had learned started to reverse the effects of the low self-worth and low self-esteem I had, because I had been convinced to believe that my natural self was not good enough. However, while I was detoxifying myself of that, I was being impacted by another experience that was causing trauma in prison that I didn't recognize while it was going on. So while I was freeing myself, some things, other things was impacting me. So when I came home, brother, I thought I was on point. I'm ready. I'm on point. So now I'm coming home, right? I got my mindset. I got a few opportunities. I got a good network. I got a plan. It ain't no real detailed plan, but I said I'm going to rely on what I know, rely on my skills, and I believe that it's enough to be able to put me in a position where I would like to say I have succeeded. But I started being impacted by other stuff. I noticed when I got around crowds, like I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe. And I remember the first incident I was at, the first time that I really recognized it. I think this is the first time that I recognized that I was in a movie theater, and I had just gotten out in August 24th of 2018. And so that movie Night School with Tiffany Haddish and Kevin Hart had come out, and it was still warm outside. So as we going into the movie theater, and I remember, brother, I just did 23 and a half years flat. So as we go into the movie theater, right, I'm going in here, we good. I'm still nervous, right, because there's a lot of people around me. I don't know this environment. I don't know these people. It's unfamiliar. My hypervigilance is kicking in.
Right.
And so when we go and we sit in the movie theater, I'm looking around, right, I'm seeing people in hoodies. Now, keep in mind, it's the summer. I'm seeing people in hoodies. The first thing pop in my mind is it's about to be a theater shooting. So I'm talking to Erica about it. You know what she said? Talk. People got on hoodies because it's cold in here. Brother.
You're in defense mode. And she's like,
brother, people enjoying
connect
the
with what is
movie,
happening
laughing,
right here. We're
and
cold.
I was unable to. And so, listen, my hypervigilance didn't even allow me to feel the temperature of the environment because I was on edge. And if I had understood that, my logical thinking would have kicked in, and there would have been a rationale behind people wearing hoodies versus me thinking that it's about to be a wholesale slaughter up in here. Brother, this is what hypervigilance so like, and that's one incident. I mean, I've been in crowded places, and Erica, who has been conscious of this, right, she can see when this stuff starts to overtake me. I guess my facial expressions change, and the first thing she asks is, "You all right?" And depending on what I feel like saying, if I feel like machoing up because I don't want people to look at me a particular way, I say, "Yeah, I'm good." But it's times when I'm like, "No, we got to get away from her," and that's a thing too. Right, particularly when you come from them communities I come from. Mental health, man, we don't do no mental health issues. Black men in them inner cities don't do no mental health issues.
Right.
Dude, because mental health equal crazy, right? And this is what crazy look like. This is what mental health look like to us in our communities. The old man walking down the street, talking to himself, waiting on his check at the first of the month. That's what mental health looked like. We never understood that mental health, right, was a way to be able to detoxify ourselves ourselves of some of the things that impeded us from being our absolute best. So mental health equals crazy. And so when we talked about mental health, it was offensive. And not only was it offensive, it was perceived as a weakness, and that's a vulnerability. And you know you don't want to be perceived as weak when you're coming from them inner city communities, brother. You know that. If you seen that salt, go ahead.
Let me say this. Pardon me. One of the things that we touch on here, and the regular night shift listeners have come to realize, is when you talk about vulnerability, it's not a weakness that you're talking about. You're actually talking about a strength. And being vulnerable has been stigmatized as a weakness.
It's been mischaracterized. Right. It's been mischaracterized. And so just imagine though, entire communities being raised with that idea.
Yes.
That being vulnerable, especially when you live in communities where people have this survival of the fittest mentality.
Yes.
If I sense a weakness in you, if I sense it, right, then I'm going to have to capitalize off that for my own benefit.
Right.
And so it would behoove a person, right, it would be in their best interest, in the interest of safety and potentially the safety of your family, to ignore the fact or even be all the way dismissive of the idea that you got some type of mental health issue, because, man, you mental health, that means you're weak. That means you're a punk. Or that means I'm going to try you. And so for me, brother, like, we have to reverse that stigma.
Yeah.
Like, we got to reverse that, man. We got to reverse it, brother. And so now you're dealing with the people who have struggled, right? And listen, I'm primarily talking about people who are black, but that is not excluded to us, right? Because, listen, what I've learned is in my field, right? So I work for a group called Integrated Treatment for Co-occurring Disorders, where we deal with people who struggle with mental health issues and substance use disorder. Man, poverty, right? Despair, hopelessness, all of these things are forms of trauma that people experience that make them turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms. And out of those unhealthy coping mechanisms, they function beneath their potential, and they drive themselves down an unhealthy road. And so when I say this, right, I'm saying that everybody has experienced trauma to some degree. Different people have the ability to function with it differently. What may impact you trauma-wise may not have no effect on me. Or I may just be conditioned to dealing with it, right, in a way where I internalize it and it just sits inside. And listen, and it blows up and blows up and blows up and blows up, right? And I've internalized so much trauma to when a situation, right, it's like a balloon with a bunch of air in it. Sooner or later, it's going to reach its limit. And then the situation is going to cause the explosion, right? And so that's that outburst of anger. And that exaggerated startle response, brother, that's PTSD. And so this is stuff that we experience even before we go to prison. And so imagine how that stuff is magnified 100-fold in prison.
Yeah.
In prison. And then after having that trauma that led you to prison, experiencing further trauma in prison with no therapy, no addressing the issue, no healthy outlets, none of that stuff, right? When you don't have any of that, and then one day they say, you free.
Yep. There you go.
You think you leave all that in prison with you? Man, you bringing that stuff with you, right? So you leave prison with a prison mindset that you bring to the streets, and you still have a prison mindset.
Right.
But let me tell you what I've learned about the resilience of the dudes, man, who I know. So you got dudes that, in spite of having these things on the inside that they may have not been able to identify or may not have found a way to resolve or to heal or to fix, brother, in spite of all that, they still out here working, trying to provide for their families, still out here fulfilling the directives and objectives of their parole, right? And it looked good on the surface, but it's some underlying internal issues that are not addressed. And in a lot of cases, right, it's dangerous for people to walk around society like that. It's like a building that's built on an unstable foundation. The wrong move will cause the whole structure to collapse.
To fall down,
To collapse, brother.
Yeah.
And whoever in the path of the collapse going down too.
Yeah.
So it behooves society, man. Because let me tell you the good thing about this, though. Man, you got brothers, right, who are geniuses coming up out of there, who took time to go back into discovering who they are. And in that discovery, they have realized some talents, some gifts, some skills, some insight that gives them the ability to directly impact some of the things that's going on in these communities, all while they're dealing with their own toxins. So if we, right, want to be able to solve these problems that's going on in these communities, we need to start reaching out to these brothers who've had these traumatic experiences and look how they function in spite of the trauma that we know that they carry and say, oh my God, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
You looking at a miracle. And then, right, even as they function in the most productive manner like that, when they get the help that they need to be able to deal with some of the stuff that they identify and feel comfortable about identifying, because we got to create safe spaces. We have to remove the stigma that mental health issues represent a weakness or represent you crazy or something undesirable. Once we remove that and we create a safe atmosphere and brothers get to have in these places where we can have these healthy outlets, right, or we can process this stuff in a healthy way, you're going to see a genius come up out of people that's going to be the answer to the problems that we're looking for. You're going to see the genius arise in them, man. I'm telling you, because I've been in the environments with these brothers, I know what we're capable of doing.
Yeah. You know, I last night, on my show last night, I told a story of when I was growing up. I grew up in Jamaica. And
John made this. That's what's up. Yes,
That's
sir,
right.
brother.
And I went to church in the Salvation Army, and I was a musician growing up. And every year, I visited at least 3 prisons, especially at Christmas time.
Right.
And I didn't tell this part of the story. We went there as musicians, providing music for the services that we were having at inside the prisons.
All right.
What we were met with was talent, and the talent that was there inside those prison walls was mind-blowing at times. And people on the outside tend to forget that behind that wall is an individual that had a dream at one point, an individual
Absolutely.
that was taught something, an individual that possibly had a one mindset before they went in that was transformed to something else, and they developed another mindset inside and they learned something else.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely, you got geniuses coming up out of there, brother.
It was amazing.
Man, I know brothers. Listen to me, brother. I know brothers who've been home 2 and 3 years, 4 years, then started businesses, literally. And I know guys and women who ain't never been to prison, got degrees in business and ain't started businesses. I know dudes with GEDs that they got in prison who got out and started businesses where they their own bosses and writing their own checks, brother. And so my thing is, and again, I know people with business degrees who ain't got businesses. And so my thing is, a lot of times it's about the drive, it's about the determination, it's about the planning, it's about the belief in yourself, and it's about executing it. And that is so important.
Yes, it is.
So important. And so my thing is, for those of us, right, who are wise, and those of us who want to really be, and so let me tell you, a lot of times when brothers come up out of prison, I understand the need for safety, man. And I know you got these dudes, man, who be doing these unjustifiably unrighteous things to children, right? Man, exclude them. Mm-hmm. You got guys, though, but what they tend to do is they tend to lump everybody into. So when you deal with people like that, right, who have those issues, then that's for somebody else to deal with, a therapist. Like, I ain't qualified to deal with that stuff, because most times people who do that are the victims of violations themselves. However, with that being said, right, you got these brothers who coming out of prison, man, who are geniuses, man, and who have been excluded and marginalized because they got a felony on their record and people don't want them around children, and they don't have any type of crime that is related to any type of abuse or any type of sexual or any type of neglect or any type of endangering of a child. These guys carry inside of them, right, as a result of their own ability to overcome obstacles, including the ones that they've internalized by way of trauma. and they still move forward in a successful manner. Imagine what they can do to people who are struggling at a younger age. Imagine what they can be for them in a mentoring capacity, but in a lot of ways they marginalized. Listen, brother, it's time for brothers from prison, right? Those of us who have journeyed back and found ourselves, and as we continue to move forward by identifying certain things. So when you talk about post-incarceration syndrome, let's be clear. So, brother, it impacts a lot of people. It ain't just you. When you come into a family setting and you bring that behavior with you, like just imagine, man, you get in a situation where you still heavily armored and guarded against any type of disrespect. And imagine your woman disrespect you. But you still in your prison mindset. You gonna revert back to those same defense mechanisms, and you gonna forget that you not in prison anymore because you bring that prison mindset out here with you. It's been you for the past quarter of a century. This is your survival mind, and you ain't just going to relinquish that because you moved into another environment, especially if it's an environment that you're unfamiliar with. Imagine, right, how you used to being able to deal with men, right, in a way where we have to interact where you going to respect me. And then imagine when you come into a situation with your woman, as you go into a situation or you all encounter a situation where you have a disagreement. Imagine how that can escalate beyond a rational point.
Yes.
And so this stuff creates danger. However, let's be clear now. We got people who also carry trauma, right, who interact with people who carry trauma. So you got a volatile mix on both sides, and that does not create for the optimal environment. It doesn't. But let me tell you, though, right, for me personally, man, brother, I wanted to be able to understand this because I know inside myself, there is something great that's just trying to get out, right? I want to be able to function with the full capacity of my best self. And I know brothers who out here functioning like that. And if we can get the type of understanding that allows people to develop the right coping skills, the right systems of relief, the right healthy outlets, man, you have guys who are giants laying in the shadows, waiting to come out, and they can directly impact these communities. I'm telling you, I know I done seen them directly impacted on the inside because prison is a micro version of what's out here.
We forget that. And, you know, I see this conversation that we're having. I'm not even calling it a conversation. We're not tricking anybody. This conversation that we're having right now is going to, it should effect a bit of a change. I'm going to say this before I let you continue. Based on what you have been saying tonight, based on a previous conversation you and I have had, based on other discussions that I've had with veterans of war.
Yeah. Them communities of warlike environments where we live in active war zones.
Exactly. What you're coming home, as in reintegrating to general society, what you're coming home with is not very different from what a service member comes home with when they get out of the military.
Not only is it not very different, brother, let me show you this real quick. Some things that are similar, right? Things that are different don't connect on any defining points. Things that are similar connect on some defining points. Things that are the same connect on all defining points. So not only is it a form of something that that is similar to what it is that people who come from war experience, man, it's the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. It's the exact same thing, brother.
Yeah.
Because not everybody who goes overseas experiences live combat. However, a lot of them still struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, yeah.
Because they came from a warlike environment and their mind had to be ramped up in a way where they had to stay alert because at any time they had to make sure that they were in a position to defend themselves because if they slept, right, if they were asleep, if they were caught slipping, if they were not aware and if they were not vigilant, then they would die.
Yes.
then they would die. And so when you live like that, imagine how that impacts your health. Imagine you staying in a state of hypervigilance. And so what's happening when you're in a state of hypervigilance? That means that they call it the HPA axis. But let me just break it down in a simple way.
Right.
So what happens is when you perceive a threat, your adrenaline dumps cortisol into your system. The cortisol in your system prepares you for a heightened interaction with the environment, fight or flight.
Right.
Fight or flight. And so what happens is it pushes blood to your limbs. Either you're going to throw your hands or you're going to run with your feet. And so what happens with this? Where does this extra blood come from? It takes it from your vital organs. So just think about you living in a state of hypervigilance, always preparing for heightened interaction with the environment, and then this blood supply being taken away from your vital organs. What that's going to do to your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver.
Yes.
It's going to deplete them of the blood and the oxygen that they need to operate normally. And what does that produce? Chronic health problems.
Yes.
And then with that, you can't sleep. And so what happens when you have an inability to sleep or fall asleep or stay asleep, which is a PTSD and a post-incarceration syndrome? What happens when you don't get adequate rest, when your sleep hygiene ain't together? What happens when your body hygiene ain't together? You dirty, you open yourself up, and you become susceptible to disease and other things that have the ability to destroy you. The same thing that happens when your physical hygiene is not on point is the same thing that happens when your sleep hygiene is not on point. You become vulnerable. Your immune system becomes compromised. Your thinking is not clear. You're not making the right decisions, and you're acting out of that stuff. Man, so for guys, brother, who are coming home and who have it together and who are moving forward while they carrying this stuff, not just the prison trauma, but the trauma that led to the prison and then the trauma that they experienced on top of that. Man,
Right.
but you know who? So they need to be case studying us. Like, how did you do it?
Right. Exactly.
How did you do it? Because, like, that's the secret. How did you do it? And it's crazy because all of this stuff, and let me tell you, bro, and it impacted me in such a way, I've been advocating for it hard. And so let me tell you one of the things that I was successful in getting done. So I live in Columbia, Missouri, but I'm from St. Louis. But what I did was, man, I've been advocating for it so hard till I got the Missouri Department of Mental Health to subtly acknowledge post-incarceration syndrome as a real thing. Create a training manual, and I had the Department of Mental Health official do a training on it. There's starting to be a recognition.
Right.
And so as they start to recognize this stuff, what they're saying is, okay, this may have some validity to it. So now when you recognize that there is some validity to it, it's time to start allocating some resources, and it's time to start allocating the right type of atmosphere to be able to promote optimum healing. It's time, man. Like, it's time. So when people worry about why the recidivism number is so high, because people, man, have trouble functioning because there are internal things that people do not identify. And another angle with that is, let me tell you what I've learned. Even a lot of people who say, well, yeah, they probably do go through some stuff in prison because it is harsh, but they shouldn't have never done nothing to get there anyway. Whatever happened to them, that's their fault. Listen, yeah, it's my fault, right? Until, right, I'm not able to cope, right? And then I revert back to my substance use disorder, and then I ain't got no job. So the thing that I know how to do to get my drug is crimes, right? And it's my fault, too, when you come home and your 70-inch TV ain't there.
Yeah.
It's my fault. It's my fault because you failed to acknowledge a thing and then to be able to provide the services that could transform a person's life for the better and create an entire safe society. Not just your property safe, your life is safe.
Right.
Your life is safe.
We often look at the end result and often miss what happened for an individual to get there. And from the moment we started this discussion tonight, you've been targeting the journey to get to where you are, where people are whispering behind your back and pointing the finger because you have been incarcerated. Everything that has led up to this point happened way prior to this point.
Right. Everything. And so what you have in post-incarceration syndrome is actually trauma that's putting on top of trauma. So it's post-incarceration syndrome, but it's complex trauma. And then they call it institutional syndrome, which speaks to a deficit or disability that you have in social skills as a result of long-term incarceration or long-term commitment to prisons or mental hospitals. So they call it institutional syndrome. They recognize it in abnormal, I think it's abnormal psychology. They recognize it like it's a recognizable thing. It's called it's called institutional syndrome. They recognize it. They identify it. It's a legitimate thing. But when it comes to people who go to prison, right, and the things that they experience in there, the majority of the people still operate under the mindset where they shouldn't have done nothing wrong to get there. That's part of the punishment.
Right. Let me ask you this.
It's an abnormal and developmental psychology, I think. But look up institutional syndrome. Anybody, Google it, look it up. You will see.
Institutional syndrome or incarceration syndrome?
So institutional syndrome is another term for it.
You see,
so institutional, go ahead.
Sorry.
Wait, institutional syndrome is that. It's when you have been committed to an institution for a long period of time, and as a result, you have a deficit or a disability in your social skills. You can't adjust, right? And so So we talking about mental hospitals, but prison too. Prison too. This is just another term for it, right? Post-incarceration syndrome is just more akin to PTSD as it breaks down the specifics.
Right. So let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Because ever since we've been talking, it's funny that you mentioned institutionalized syndrome. Because I was going to ask if you think that at some point this post-incarceration syndrome would probably be changed to post-institutionalization syndrome.
Well, let me tell you the danger in that. That's dangerous. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it takes the ship away from the specifics of prison. And let me give you an example.
Right.
Let me give you an example. So when you talk about the civil rights movement, right, which was a movement that was set up for black people to get the civil liberties that they deserved in America, right? As black people started to gain momentum and they set this up, other groups started to come in, right? And as these other groups started to come in and they claimed that their civil rights were being violated, right? People started addressing what they perceived as the violation of the civil rights of other groups.
Right.
And then black people got pushed to the back burner. So my thing is other things can get jumbled up in it that shifts the focus away from the real issue.
Right.
So I say institutions. So, right, we don't want to get it confused. We don't want to just blanket as institutional syndrome where they start disregarding the people who have been to prison and start talking about the people who have had long-term commitments to mental institutions. Like, that's something that needs to be addressed too. However, when I say that, I'm just saying that there is a precedence in abnormal psychology where they recognize the impact of being committed to a restricted environment for long periods of time. So it's recognized in abnormal psychology. However, we talking about the impact and the effects specifically of being in prison, jail, the joint.
Yeah. Well, let me raise this point.
Okay.
You say it shifts the focus.
It has the ability.
It has the ability, yes. It has the ability
to because
shift the focus.
It hasn't, yes.
Now, and I ask that because the stark similarities, and you mentioned a mental hospital, but I'm going to take it to a place where I just finished doing a series of shows on, back to something I mentioned earlier, the military, where you are told when to go to bed. You're told when to get up. You're told what to do. You're told. That's
called a chronic sense of helplessness from the suppression of lifestyle choices. That's a recognizable symptom. It's called the suppression. It's what's called a chronic sense of helplessness. That's a byproduct or a result of the suppression of lifestyle choices. I experienced that too. When I go to the supermarket and I got an array of things to choose from versus the one or two items they got in the prison canteen. So now I'm overwhelmed. Man, they got all these different toothpaste. all these different chips, all this different food, and it becomes an overwhelming experience to me. And when I went shopping by myself the first time, I went to Aldi's with a plan to show out with them groceries. I end up buying the stuff that I knew to make penitentiary nachos because I could not make a decision. And even when I used to go out with Erica, when me and my woman used to go out at first, and we'll go to a restaurant, and she'll be like, "What do you want?" The first thing I used to say is, "What you get?" I automatically deferred to her. Deferred. Right. I'm going to get what you get instead of making choices for my own. I allow other people to make choices for me. So that is a chronic sense of helplessness due to the suppression of lifestyle choices. I ain't had the ability to make the choice for myself, and I didn't realize that it handicapped me. So when I had the ability to make the choice for myself, I really didn't know how to do it. I had to learn it all over again. And I'm still learning it. Let me be clear. I'm still learning it.
Yeah.
I'm still learning it because 18 months don't undo 23 and a half years of incarceration. 18 months don't undo that, right? What it does is as you adjust and as you learn coping mechanisms and as you do things, it allows you to gradually get better. But it don't undo it. Just because I got a nice job, just because I got my own apartment, just because I got me a car, right? That stuff ain't undid all the stuff that's impacting me. Yeah, it's helping. It's helping, but it's other issues that I need to address. So like I try to deal with the other exercise. I don't do that. That's a good, healthy coping strategy. That's a way to release negativity. I don't meditate like I used to. That's another thing because meditation stables the mind. It stabilizes the mind. And the very fact that post-incarceration syndrome sends the mind in disarray, meditation is the direct antithesis of that. Just like the antidote for stress or the antidote for chaos or the antidote for all of that is peace. So just like post-incarceration syndrome, right, if not checked, right, or not managed, can send the mind into a state of chaos and disarray. Meditation stables the mind. So meditation is a good coping skill. Right. And so like the things that I know work, I still struggle with doing them regularly like I did in prison. But I'm gradually getting better and trying to implement it a little bit more in my life. Also, I'm going to tell you one of the most important things that's overlooked and underestimated, a healthy diet. The food you eat. The food you eat, man. Yep. You have to be careful about what you put into your body. We are already dealing with a shortened lifespan as a result of having transgenerational and multi-generational trauma corrupt our physiology. And so when we start eating these unhealthy foods, we further shorten our lifespan. And in a lot of ways, we eat these unhealthy foods because they taste good. That's a coping mechanism.
Is it really because it tastes good or just because it's advertised well?
Well, it's both of them. It's a combination of both. Like they advertised it good, and it made our brain think it was good, right? And so it's a subliminal, a seductive suggestion, right? And as a result of that, we've been conditioned to think it tastes good and it's unhealthy, and we're willing to spend our money on it, and we're willing to kill people about it and hurt people. Look at the frenzy over them Popeye's chicken sandwiches. Yes, ridiculous.
Yeah, that didn't make sense to me.
Man, that was some excellent marketing, though. Well, you got people who lost their lives behind chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
Literally. And so even that speaks to another thing. We can get back into that later. But look, in the end, all of these things, right? When you look at the corruption on a cellular level, the changing of our DNA, the changing of our brain chemistry, how it impacts our bodies, poverty, and not having the ability to have access at healthcare and access at healthy foods because we don't have the money to be able to do it, not having healthy coping mechanisms, and even for those of us who may need medication to be able to stabilize ourselves, not having the ability, the money or the insurance to get that, so we go to self-medicate. That creates substance use disorder, which is a whole nother monster in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right. And let me be clear. Post-incarceration syndrome and the symptoms you see, let's be clear. That is not the primary issue. Those are the symptoms. You can treat the symptoms, but if you don't get to the underlying cause, managing the symptoms will become more and more difficult and it'll emerge. And I'm going to give you an example. You know when a person got the flu, if they got the fever, that the fever is a symptom. But if the temperature get too high, then the fever can be a threat to life. So the fever warrants an immediate addressing because it has the potential to kill. But you know that fever ain't the real issue. The virus that's driving the fever up is the issue, but you got to address the fever because the fever is going to kill you. That's the symptoms we deal with, brother. This is deeper than just a bunch of symptoms. The symptoms are the things that drive the behavior, but we have to get up under there, right? We have to get up under there. So even if I manage the symptoms, and I put this thing in remission, if I don't address it in a healthy way, then these unhealthy coping mechanisms they ain't gonna do nothing but manifest in a different way. So I done went from using drugs to having low impulse control and a sexual addiction. I done went here, and now I got this unhealthy appetite, right? Where I got this food that I'm taking in that's killing me. Brother, this has to take place on a holistic level, right? And you have to realize that the things that we treat that immediately impact us appear to be great. But if you don't understand how things operate, the symptom, like a high fever, can make you think that it's the most pressing thing that you need to deal with. And in most cases it is. But the fever will keep coming back if you don't treat the underlying cause.
Yeah, definitely that. I want to remind our viewers and listeners, the phone line is actually open. If you want to extend a word to Mataka, you can do so. 773-789-STEW. That's 773-789-7839. You can call, you can text, you can, of course, jump into the Stew Pot on kevinstew.com. Those of you listening on TuneIn and want to be interactive, you can go to kevinstew.com. And it's fine to be anonymous. It's fine. Express your views there. This is a judgment-free zone. If you haven't known that before, if you're new to the night shift, it's a judgment-free zone, and our purpose here is to have acceptance through enlightenment. And
absolutely,
we're growing. Absolutely. We're changing the narrative. It's a movement. Get on board.
I wanted to share you. I wanted to share this with you.
Yeah.
So you have people who are recognizing this, right? And they're fighting on multiple levels, right? So, like you got a sister down in Houston, Texas, brother. Her and her husband, the Brunos, bruh, they down there. She reached out to me and she talked about post-incarceration syndrome as a result of the things that she studies. She has a book called Wife After Prison, and it deals with post-incarceration syndrome. Women who have been in relationships with men who have come home from prison, right, and they have had these issues, and how to deal with that. And she is creating models, right? She and I talked about, she developed some stuff, right? She's down there putting that work in Houston, Texas,
nice.
Bro. So shout out to the sister and her husband for putting that work in, right? And they got Facebook groups, and that's good. You need support, man, and we need to create safe spaces.
I'd love to talk with her.
Well, I'm definitely gonna give her your information.
Thank you, bro.
I'm definitely gonna give her your information. It's tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Because
so if anybody's got some questions, they can ask.
You know, and you raised a very important point. You mentioned it briefly earlier that you had a support system, and big ups to Erica for that.
And my mother and my brothers.
Yes.
My brother, like my family too. So not just Erica, but my family.
Yeah.
Mom, my sisters. I had a good support system because I had a team that wanted to see me succeed because they understood what I had gone through.
Right, but I mentioned Erica because of where we're coming from with what you just mentioned. Women living with men coming out of the incarceration system, out of the prison system. That must be, if not one of the most trying experiences, the most trying experience, because you, the individual, the man coming out, and let's not just limit it to men, because women come out with these same issues.
Absolutely, they get it too. They come from them plantations that they call prisons. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So individuals coming out. But since we're talking to a man, and when we think prison, we immediately think of men.
Right.
And the struggle that they have to deal with these women, the woman walking on eggshells because she doesn't know really how to interact with her man. And when you have a strong woman that understands that, hey, this man has gone through a whole lifetime behind bars in
Right.
a type of society that most of us only hear about in TV shows and movies. And we really don't get it.
And so, right, we need to. So, sisters, they need that platform too because they need people that they can share the information
Yeah.
with and decompress and get knowledge from, so that they can be more strategic in how they approach people who struggle with that. Because, like, for everybody, it's an issue. For everybody, it's an issue. It impacts everybody.
Yeah, it
I had to
does.
kill that spider. Hold on, my fault, brother. That noise in the background. I'm an arachnophobe, so I had to get them. But yeah,
I
so
understand.
they definitely need a support system. It was Erica, right, who actually through a little bit of studying helped me identify what it was, right?
Mm.
Because she helped me identify what it was, and it's crazy, brother. Because let me just be clear. Um, I didn't want to say like I had no issues. Man, I came out on prison on top of my game. Studied, learned. I had discovered some things about myself. I felt my power moving through my body, and I was determined to be able to get out here and make an impact on the world.
Yeah.
Man, that's the last thing I would do was say, man, that I got an issue that I'm struggling with, right? That is filtering over into my relationship, how I deal with myself, like when I'm alone and the hypervigilance or when I'm out in crowds. Man, I wasn't going to be saying that, right? And so it's only recently, right, maybe within the last 6 weeks, that I even acknowledged the fact that I have a form of PTSD because I didn't. I wouldn't
Really?
acknowledge it. Yeah, like in the last 6 weeks, and I'm still. Let me be clear. So I'm gonna be honest and transparent with you. So I'm still wrestling with the idea of seeing like a therapist.
Yeah.
Right. So, because, like, look, man, again, I have been shaped and molded by a culture that says that, hold on for a minute. This is you asking somebody outside of your social paradigm for help, especially when they ain't experienced what you didn't experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And and then I'm the type of person where I'm fiercely independent.
Right.
I'm fiercely independent, so I am driven to study this information and gather it. And then I want to be able to do it myself. This is not to say that I couldn't use the help, but I have this thing, brother, about me. I want to be able to learn how to do it myself. And when it's time for me to ask for help, when I have difficulties, like I know how to reach out to grab those things. And I have people at my availability that I can talk to or that I can receive help from. But let me just say this too. Man, I
Mm-hmm.
ain't doing this for just myself. Man, I got a whole bunch of brothers who I love and who love me, who look up to me and I look up to them, who will not come out publicly and talk about this stuff, right? And so for me, I'm not going to be trying to force them to be connecting with nobody and they not ready to do that, right? So what I want to do is to be able to arm myself with the most information and apply that information in a way that allows me to move past some of the things that I struggle with and then go to my peers and be
Yes.
like, brothers, look, this is how we do it. And then those things that we may not be able to get past ourselves, once we reach a level of comfort, then we'll start connecting to people outside of us. And then we can get the extra help we need. But we're going to have to take these steps by ourselves right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to. We're going to have to, brother. Because we have a brotherhood and a camaraderie, and there is a trust issue, too, that comes along with coming home from prison. Man, we don't just trust anybody.
You know,
So
I'm,
that's the dichotomy, brother. That's the struggle.
I want to apologize to the person that was just calling. Could you call right back, please? Okay, I got you. All right, let me
Yeah.
hear someone calling in. Just a moment. Let me join this. Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, caller. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, man. My name Chris, man. That's my big brother Mataka, man. He been
GMC.
Hey,
yeah,
Chris.
he been an
Welcome.
inspiration
Welcome.
to me, man. I was just chiming in on a little bit of that topic, and one thing I was thinking about is like when you think about post incarceration syndrome, I think a lot of people look at the justice system as though it's a place of integrity, and so I think when they hear about people that have been incarcerated, I make you think, oh well, he did something to be there, so forget him. You know what I mean? Basically,
Right.
and
He deserved whatever happened to him.
exactly. I didn't directly talk to people who really thought, and these people from these inner cities, these ghettos, that directly think that prison is a place of integrity. That you're dealing with CEOs and staff members that are people to be respected, and it's completely the opposite. Like it's honorable people, that just want to do their job and stuff, but you also go deal with complete idiots that don't want to see you do nothing. That
Who gonna subject you to the most inhumane treatment possible?
Right.
Exactly. So when it comes to people who are incarcerated, a lot of times they just get looked at it like the brother Mataka said, like, man, he did something, he deserved to be there, whatever they're doing in there, he deserved all that. And one day, people gonna serve their time and hopefully come home from that, and they're gonna have to deal with the world again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and the people in the world.
In the world, exactly.
Yes.
Just being able to survive, and some people. I did 10 plus years.
Yeah.
I came home. I knew 2 years in, that I wanted to come home a different man. I want to come home and take care of my family the right way. I want to come home and be a productive person, if however that looked it, because I was none of that before I left. But
Right.
I knew there's no way I could go and do another day in there. So I knew I had to change my life. So when I came home, man, I had to learn how to get a job. I had to learn how to do all type of stuff that I never even thought about doing before. And so, you got people that's going in there, and if they did what they did, the judge gave them whatever they felt like it was necessary, and they coming home though.
Yeah.
So at what point are we able to deal with the mental side of it?
Right. And what point does society offer all the resources that it has at its availability to ensure a successful transition from prison to society?
Right.
When does society provide the wraparound services? Like, you punish me, I did that, then help me transition. Give me all the resources that you have available to make sure that my reentry back into society is met with the least amount of resistance, and I have opportunities available because I'm ready to change. It's not set up like that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hence the cycle. Someone mentioned earlier in the show, in the stew pot, that it's a vicious cycle, and that
it is.
And that's exactly it. And last night I was talking about the cost of incarceration, looking at the financial side of incarceration and who it is that pays. It's no cheap venture running a prison.
No.
And it is families and friends that pay the bulk share of it.
Yeah. So look at 13th if y'all want to see all the companies that have a vested interest and who make mountains of money off the so-called correctional movement or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But let me just say this though. So like I do want to say this like in all fairness.
Right.
So I have had the opportunity to actually go into a prison that I did time at and share what it is that I'm doing with the brothers to try to remove all the obstacles out of the path to reentry. And so with that, right, there have been so Missouri is on the cutting edge of a lot of different stuff, especially now. Again, right, I just seen an email the other day where the Department of Corrections is trying to get training in post-incarceration syndrome.
Hold on a second. We have another call to add here. Hello?
Hey, how you doing, Stu?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Hello?
You there, caller?
Someone comes in, that we on the show?
Yes. We're live on the show. And Mataka was just giving a point just now. I want you to just hold your view for just one quick moment. And
Yes,
so,
sir.
okay, yes, Mataka, go
So
ahead.
me or no, I was just saying that Missouri is trying to because you got people out here advocating and going hard in the paint, and I will not rest until the proper understanding is acquired so that people can start moving forward with that information and start to develop different strategies as to how to help people who are coming home from prison
Right.
re-enter society in the most successful way possible. So like I just seen the email where people are asking for post-incarceration syndrome training. So they're making a correlation between trauma
Right.
and behavior.
Yes.
And with that, they want to be able to learn how through trauma-informed care do they move forward with a new behavioral model or a new treatment model to influence behavior in a way that does not create post-incarceration syndrome. So Missouri trying to do that. It's going to be gradual. It's going to be slow because you're going to have to change a culture that's been in place for a long time. But you have people at the top levels that are trying to make that happen.
Right. Caller.
Yes. How you doing?
We're well.
What's up, Mataka? This is Rafi.
What's up, Ruler? Hotel.
What's going on?
Greetings.
Hey, I was calling. I did some time too with his brother and everything, but some of the things that he speak about goes very in depth, because like I felt every bit of it, especially when he talk about coming out. Some of the things that he has dealt with, I've dealt with, and I'm still in St. Louis. So one of the things that he particularly talked about was when he go out to eat, he asked Erica, like, what you eat? You pick it, or something like that.
Yeah,
I
defer.
Yeah.
Exact same thing, because we coming from a place where our food was picked and chosen for us.
Yeah.
My story, I go back to when I was 20 years old. I was 20 when I came into incarceration, and did 15 years, came out at 35.
Yeah.
And, I think that a lot of people, it goes real deep. So you have a racial barrier too there, because it's particular treatment that comes with the black inmate versus the white inmate, because predominantly these prisons are in rural areas.
Yes.
So the trauma dealing with the racial aspect too is there.
Absolutely.
So when you come into
that's recurring trauma.
System,
yes.
Right. When you come into this prison system and you're dealing with some of the correctional officers who are 19 years old, like what is the mental development to help you correct something from somebody that's 40 years old?
Yeah.
And you out of a rural area where it's prominently a racial area. But so in Missouri, it's a lot of, supremacy in the rural areas dealing with like KKK and things like that.
Yeah.
So some of these correctional officers, their background with their relatives, grandfathers, fathers, mothers, come from that background. So they come in with a mindset and a teaching already to hate us. So now they're putting more trauma on top of the basic prison trauma.
Yeah.
And I think that gets overlooked.
It does get overlooked. So what happens is it's recurring trauma and re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It reinforces already existing trauma that's from the same vein. And so absolutely it does. Absolutely it does.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it. Well, like I say, I appreciate love it, really.
Hey, Stu.
Yeah, man.
Hello?
Yes.
Let me say one thing before I get off, man. That was my brother, Rafi. Let me say this. Man, when you think about all this trauma that we've been faced with from the time we came out the womb, then go to prison, face more trauma, then come home and succeed. Man, what that tell you about a brain like that? The resilience. A person that really, really want to change, man, in a society that don't want you to change.
Yeah.
Man, my brother Rafi, my brother Mataka, man, they tested me, man. They genius. And man, we miracles, man.
Listen,
Miracles in
I,
place.
I tip my hat to brothers like you guys that have had this experience and didn't just roll over and say, "Woe is me,"
Right.
Right,
and no, I'm
right.
entitled to some something versus I am going to make a change. I am going
Yeah.
to influence a change for the better.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I tip my hat to you guys. I really do.
We
Right.
appreciate it, bro.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that
Right.
because sometimes our hard work that we try to do to sustain our livelihood, our family, all
It
three of us
goes
have,
unacknowledged.
Yes.
it goes unacknowledged. And it goes back to what he said, like, we are the miracles. And I'm not saying that to toot our horn, but, what people can say that they've been through the things that we've been through as a people, also as an incarcerated people. You know, yeah, we did what we did, and we could go into a deep conversation about how that can be explained. As far as I'm losing track of mine. I'm driving, y'all. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but
Be careful out there.
you know, oh yeah, I am. I got the Bluetooth on. Believe me, I'm
Hands free,
being
brother.
safe.
Hands free device.
Yeah.
But it goes a little deep than just us doing what we doing. Like Mataka said, the trauma that was built and the trauma before we went into the incarceration system.
Yes, sir.
There was a certain level of having a lack of understanding, a lack of ability, which derives from the so-called education system, that deprived us of being able to build ourselves. So when we think about it, in society, what is it that teaches a black man how to be a properly black man?
Mm.
Nothing.
Lil Wayne.
So right
Lil Wayne.
there,
Why?
we are already at a disadvantage coming out the womb
Yeah.
in this
Absolutely.
society.
Yeah.
So to come out here, so Top spoke on some things, and I kind of like the fact that he said, some brothers that got business. I'm one of them. I haven't been out a whole 3 years, and I have a business, a legit business. Not
Nice.
just a run of a mill side hustle. I'm actually registered with the state and everything. Good
Excellent.
to go. And
Congratulations
back
to
the
you.
drive. I'm not saying like I don't deal with things, because some of the things that I deal with my lady, and we've been together since I've been out, is that sometimes I isolate myself when it comes to me and her having issues or discussions where we need to work things out. And this primarily comes from where when you were in prison, I was able to deal with this a certain way amongst these men in this volatile environment.
Yeah.
I'm not like that with my woman in the free world, and it's almost like I don't know how. I missed 15 years of my life where I had those growing pains and those structural relationships to bring me there. So all I do is sit down and be like, you know what, I don't even want to talk about it.
Right.
You know what I'm
So
saying?
Right.
we have not developed the maturity through experience to be able to deal with situations in a mature manner. Absolutely. AKA arrested in our development in some areas.
Yes.
Yep.
What's crazy about
So,
that is, had you been free, you might have still not developed it, because who's gonna show you how to do that health?
You right.
exactly.
Just
Yeah.
told you. You right.
I talk to a lot of people, and we get praise and everything, but I tell them like, hey, I'm still dealing with some things, and I
Yes, sir,
appreciate
brother.
this,
Yes,
because
sir.
sometimes I need to hear that. You know what I'm saying? But like I said before, what do we have in place that helps black men to be developed as black men in this country? So
Mhm.
it's either we assimilate or we get disassimilated.
That's what,
Mm.
that's what they want, assimilation.
So, like, what if I don't want to identify as the status quo or the social norm? Nowadays, you got brothers that can't even graduate because they got dreads in their head. So right then and
Yes.
there, it's a cultural trauma that he talked about and that we deal with, and it's a cultural assassination.
Mhm.
So you made it feel like your natural choices about your identity are not good enough, and you need to conform to what we say is the proper identity, or you're not gonna move forward in life. That's trauma.
Exactly.
I,
Exactly.
So listen. So before we go, because how much
th-
longer we got? As you know, I got to go to work in the morning.
yeah,
I'm
I know,
usually
and I have some questions
yes, sir.
in the stew pot for you,
Okay, okay.
Mataka. Gentlemen,
Yes,
I
sir.
thank you for your input. Believe me,
Thank you for
I,
No
listening.
I
problem. I really
I have this
appreciate
platform for you guys. We will talk.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Blessings.
All right,
Hold
y'all
up,
take
y'all.
care.
I appreciate oh,
Okay.
Mataka.
Yes, sir, brother.
Oh, and for the guys just now, I should have said this too. Someone just posted. Thank you, gentlemen, for not conforming to what society expects you to, which
Absolutely. Shout
is
out to Rafik and Chris.
yes, big shout out to them. Thank you, gentlemen. A few questions for you. I'm gonna say
Okay.
them real quick, and if we need to revisit any of them,
Absolutely.
one is four questions I have coming at you,
Okay.
back to back. How many books did you
Okay.
read while incarcerated? What
Hundreds.
books and authors do you
Uh.
recommend?
So.
Hold on. Wait
Okay.
before you
Okay.
answer, and I'm just gonna
Okay.
hit you with them, and then we can go back to them. How many years did you initially study? Did you intentionally study? And when did
Okay.
you begin teaching? And how many did you teach on the inside and outside?
So the books that I studied, let me be clear. So
Mm-hmm.
naturally, the autobiography of Malcolm X. That's first.
Mm-hmm.
However, I've come across as a result of that multiple people. So I'm looking at my library right now. So let me just tell you some of the people who I've read. So
Right.
you have Amos Wilson, phenomenal author, Blueprint for Black Power, Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, Black on Black Violence, Awakening Natural Genius in Black Children. You got the Psychoacademic Holocaust. You got Psychic Trauma by Sultan and Naima Abdul Latif, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. You got Powernomics. You got Black Labor, White Wealth by Charles Anderson. You got the various Medunetters, right? And then you have different spiritual books, the Quran and several other spiritual books. You have the Sister Joy DeGruy with post-traumatic slave syndrome. You have Medical Apartheid, The Secret History of Medical Experimentations on Blacks in America. You got books by Asa G. Hilliard, SBA, The Reawakening of the African Mind, The Maroon Within Us. You got Introduction to African Civilizations, and you got many people. You got Anthony Broder with Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. You got Chancellor Williams with The Destruction of a Black Civilization. You got Naeem Akbar with The Community of Self, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. You got Jacob Carruthers. You have Wade Nobles. You have a plethora, a group of Black psychologists who have made moves. You got Iyanla Vanzant, the book The Spirit of a Man, a phenomenal book. And then on a spiritual level, like it's other people that I read beside all these authors. I'm gonna tell you a book that was, so you got Mawada Ashby, Healing the Criminal Heart, all the African religions, all volumes 1 through 5, multiple. But you also have, it's a white guy who I felt was instrumental in helping me grow, and I have to push his books out there, and that's the dude Eckhart Tolle. He has The Power of Now in a New Earth,
Yeah.
Awakening Your Life's Purpose. Like, these books
Right.
are phenomenal to me, right? And so these are just to name a few, man. You got Richard Williams, They Stole It, But You Must Return It. You got Yosef Ben Yakin, Black Man in the Nile and His Family, Africa, the Mother of Civilization. Brother, you got so many brothers and sisters, right? So let's not forget Francis Cress Welsing with the ISIS Papers, right? We don't want to forget the sisters either. So I've read so many books till it's hard pressed for me to be able to think about everybody who I've been blessed to come across with in my journey. I studied seriously for almost 2 decades, almost 20 years, if not 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. So let's remember, like, I did 23 and a half years from February 19th, 1995 until August 24th of 2018. And then so I kind of like, when we talk about teach, right? So I don't like to use the word teach because I don't really see myself as a teacher, right? I don't. So I see myself as a brother who imparts information and strives to demonstrate the effectiveness of that information in my lifestyle as best as possible. I tell you about it. We talk about it. I try to share my understanding. But other than that, I try to live it to the best of my ability. And I have struggles in that area because I'm a human. But I would like to think that I'm growing. And so I would like to think that I've been a positive influence in the lives of brothers for just as long as I've been studying.
Yes.
What was the other question? It was one more question, brother. I think that was 3 of them.
Well, actually, you touched on all of them. The question really was, when did you begin teaching and how many did you teach on the inside and outside?
So, wow. So how many did I influence? I would like to think that I was a positive, influential force in their lives. And I want to be modest, but I'm going to say it's been a lot. Like, I have respect from among my peers, even guys who are not ready to transform their lives fully, who stayed connected to the street organizations that we label gangs, all these youngsters. Like, I had a lot of respect and adulation because not only was I a person who talked a particular message, I walked that message. And so when they see you walk it like you talk it, as them youngsters say, then they gravitate towards you because of your authenticity, because you keep it real. Right. So I would like to think that I influenced a lot of people. Since I've been home, I've had an opportunity to be able to also share my experience and information with a lot of people. Like, I've spoken at every high school in Columbia. I did something at Lincoln University in Jefferson City twice. Various things with the Columbia Public School System, spoken to the diversity and inclusion and equity team. Like, I've done a lot, brother. And it's just starting. So it's crazy because my original thing that I used to talk to people about was education and the incorporation of our history as a people. So I used to go in front of educators who are responsible for shaping and molding the minds of our children, the people who get these degrees to teach and impart information that's designed to disseminate healthy information to them so that they can cultivate the proper sense of self and inspiration. So I used to ask these teachers, tell me something about Black history prior to slavery. And most of them can't tell you. Most of them cannot tell you. So by default, what happens is it conjures up images of Black people running around with bones in their noses, throwing spears. And the subtle message behind that is, yes, slavery was this atrocious thing and it was bad. But look, you got civilization. Look what the trade-off, we saved you.
Yeah.
And so like that,
I've heard that argument.
Brother, that's garbage. So listen, it's imperative that people understand that when you talk about ancient Kemet, which they call Egypt, right? They try to make it seem like Egypt is this light-skinned civilization that came from somewhere in the Mediterranean and settled in Africa, just so people know that Kemet or Egypt is in Africa. And when you study the Edfu text, which is a record of the ancient Kemiyu or the Egyptians, they'll tell you that they're an Ethiopian colony. And then when you slide right down there in their Merowe, you'll find information that tells you that the Cushites, or what we call the modern day Ethiopians, will tell you that Egypt is their child, just like America is the child of Great Britain. However, you got educators that don't know about Songhai, Mali, Ghana, and Kanem-Bornu, the West African Islamic empires. Nobody knows about this, but these are the people who are teaching the minds of our children. And so they don't have the ability to infuse them with healthy information to bring about a healthy identity, to unleash their potential on the world, to solve some of these problems. That was my original thing that brought me recognition. And then I started to understand how I was going through post-incarceration syndrome, right? And the things that I was struggling with, and I was able to identify where some of these things occurred. And then I was able to connect all the information because it's all related.
Yes.
It's all related. The depriving us of a healthy education and healthy information is a form of trauma.
They don't, it's not seen that way in the public eye. Well, partly because I think they don't know.
Let me ask you a question. So neglect is a form of trauma. That's a form of sanctuary trauma. So if you my child, right, and I got the resources to be able to feed you, and I deny you food, right, that's a form of neglect, and it's a form of child abuse. That's trauma.
Yeah.
So if the information, right, that possesses the right nutrients to be able to develop in you a healthy identity, and I deprive you of that, it's the same as depriving a child of healthy food, brother. That's a form of trauma.
Yes, it is.
That's intellectual neglect.
Yes, it is. and it's not perceived that way, but it very much is. And
Yes,
you
it
know
is.
that point that you raised about when it comes to history, especially when you're talking about black history, and it only goes as far as slavery, and they stop right there, like that is where black history started. No, it's
Yeah,
not.
man.
When I learned first that it wasn't Christopher Columbus that was charting shipways or navigating the waters and charting these courses, that the Silk Trade has been doing it between Africa and going up the Mississippi River for years before that.
Brother, it's beautiful. And so way before that, so when we look at who we say is the richest brother who ever lived, Mansa Musa, when he took that 60,000 plus people on the pilgrimage with him to Mecca in 1324, if you think the story of Mansa Musa, right, is phenomenal. Look at his predecessor, Abu Bukhari II, and learn about how Mansa Musa got the throne transferred to him because Abu Bukhari went on an expedition to discover the Americas. Read the book by Ivan Van Sertima, They Came Before Columbus. Go look at them Olmec heads that's sitting down there in Africa in the word Olean, which means the land where the rubber is produced, and you see the Ethiopian archer's helmet right on the heads of those people, man. Man, the connections. And so this is the thing. Let me just give you this last lesson that I used to give people, man. So when we look, let me tell you this. You got the pyramids on the Giza Plateau and you got the Mayan pyramids, right?
Yeah.
And so the Mayan, they'll tell you, right, they'll tell you that aliens came, right, and built these pyramids because they want to create the idea that these two cultures remain unconnected. But let's look at this. So you got the Mayan culture, which is an offshoot of the Olmec culture. The Olmec culture traces right back to Africa and Ethiopia because they were the Ethiopian archer helmets. And then the Ethiopians are also the parents of the Kenyu or the Egyptians. Whether they share a common ancestry.
Right.
They sure, brother, but people don't make these connections because the information is discouraged and not talked about. That's why one of the things that we need to do is be able to start. If we don't pay these taxes and send our children to these schools, we need to demand that they start including this proper information.
Right.
And so what does this
Yes.
do? What does this do? This starts to undo or eliminate the conditions that can cause trauma, where we seek out the unhealthy coping mechanisms and make bad decisions that put us in play for the criminal justice system to send us to prison, where we incur more trauma, and then when we come out, we operate with post-incarceration syndrome. So it don't start in prison.
Exactly. I have some more questions for you. And
Yes, sir.
first one, would you say the foundation was built in prison? Studying, meditation, teaching, etc.
For me?
Yes.
For me, yes. Yes. Brother, let me tell you something. I had to be taken out of that environment because I was a product of the streets. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And when you're in them streets, you only get one or two ends. You either going to go to prison or you going to go to the grave. So had I not went to prison, and let me be clear, I did not want to do 23 and a half years, but had not my madness been interrupted, I never would have got an opportunity to sit down and examine myself and then seek the information necessary to correct some of the things that I had internalized about myself that were absolutely wrong and unhealthy.
You know, that right there is a definition of a message. You take your mess, you add some age to it.
I like that, brother. And I like the thing that you said about conversation. Like this truth conversation. You're right, because it ain't no con. It ain't no lies.
Yeah.
No, brother, I like that.
You prepared yourself for many years for this release and opportunities such as this. Without the years of preparation, you would have had a true loss when released. Do you agree or disagree?
Absolutely. I agree 100 million %. It would have been a squandered opportunity, and I would have came out in my 40s. Had I been alive, right, I would have came out in my 40s still thinking with a child mindset. You see a lot of people arrested in their development now. You got these dudes in their 50s and 60s still running around here with stuff that they was doing in the 80s. And so that represents a form of an identity impairment because they still searching for themselves through the approval of other people, right? And it represents the fact that they have been arrested in their development. And so let me be clear. Right. Information is not. So there are some things, right, that I need to mature in, because just reading books alone is not the key to maturity. You have to go through some experiences too.
Right.
And so, but had I not had that information, and had I not had examples through reading this to pattern myself after, and my brothers, to be able to bounce this information off of and share and to strive together to be better. Had I not had that, man, it would have been an absolute waste of time, and I would have came out here in a state of disarray.
Which apparently is what is happening with some. Doesn't happen with all.
It is. It doesn't. We want to try to fix that, though.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What are the final steps prior to being released from prison to make a smooth transition into society? What is the first step?
That's a beautiful question.
When
That's
finally
a
released,
beautiful question.
that will result in a smoother transition?
So you have to prepare when you get out.
I like that
the
question
world.
too.
So when I went to prison, they didn't have the internet. So let me tell you, I work at a behavioral health clinic. And when I have encounters with people who are part of my caseload, I have to enter notes into the computer. I do not know how to type. I'm a fast pecker. I did not know how to navigate my way around the computer. The team that I work for, ITCD, they helped me learn how to do that. The people who I work with helped me. They were patient enough with me asking the same question multiple times. I'm sure it was probably irritating, but they were patient enough to help me navigate my way around the computer, right? So the things that you can do to better prepare yourself to be able to get a job when you get out is you need to learn some computer skills. You need to learn some typing skills. You need to take these personal and professional development classes that teach you how to navigate an interview when you come across the inevitable question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? That's something that people dread facing, because in most cases the interview could be going good, but when that question comes up, the mind of a person, right, who is the person on the end saying, yes, I've been convicted of a felony, they believe that that's the deal breaker. And in their minds, when they start embracing that belief, they believe that they will not be able to get ahead by getting a job. And you got to survive somehow. So what you going to do? You're going to go back to what you know. So, you got to take them personal and professional development classes. You got to get all the technological skills that you can get. But some of the things you have to do is, man, you have to learn some of the bad habits you have, and you have to start developing new behavior patterns for yourself. So come out with the best skills you can have, come out with some discipline, come out with some vision. The plan that you need to come out with realistically is know your strengths and know your weaknesses. What do you want to do? Then prepare in every way that you can while you're in prison. Because let me tell you something, I have not read to the degree that I read in prison. And I used to trip off of it a lot. But let me tell you what one of my guys told me. Shout out to my main man, Basim, in Seattle, Washington. He told me this. He said, Mataka, you studied for 23 years. When you training on a job and you going through orientation, after that orientation, you still go to work. You go to work. You ain't reading about orientation no more. You executing what you done learned. So you not going to constantly read and study because you on the job training, and then that what you learned while you were training, you executing. So in a lot of ways, I don't study like I used to. I have different means of studying now. I might look at some videos, or I might listen to some audio. However, the time that I read, I still carry that with me. And so all the things that I've read and all the things that I want to do, even though I don't read as much as I did, that was a training period for me. Now I'm out here executing.
Nice. What is the number one method of coping with the frustration of being released and trying to obtain employment, getting in an apartment, purchasing an automobile? The rejection is real and the frustration is real. One must not resort to prison methods. What is one way to cope and overcome these daily obstacles?
Take advantage of the resources that are available to you in your community and lean on your support systems, whatever you got. And you're going to listen, you're not going to have a 100% smooth transition without any barriers and without any resistance. You're going to have to push through that. You got to have tenacity. You got to have resilience, and you got to have persistence. And these are not things that you can quantify. Right? You can't say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to be resilient. I can talk to you, but you have to tap down inside yourself and pull that out, right? You got to realize, hey, man, I wasn't brought into existence out of nothing to fail. I don't have to go back to prison. And I know that I'm going to encounter some difficulties. However, I'm a living witness. Rafiq a living witness. Chris, a living witness, and several other brothers whose names that I can mention, who done substantial amounts of time in prison, been in them streets all their lives, transformed themselves from the inside, came out, met obstacles, right? Seen ways around those obstacles, right? And then pushed through them, went around them, went under them, or went over them. And now, as a result of being dedicated and not falling victim to the frustration of the barriers that they meet, right, then they have pushed through. And as a result of that, now they have gained the momentum. You got to push your way through it. And then you got to utilize, they have resources in societies. Be diligent enough to know the resources that are available to you and go get them. Man, you might not have a car. Get on that bus. Go get that job and start saving your money and be wise. Like, you have to budget. You got to do it. But listen, you once you get through it's just like when you start to walk. The first time, like, you ain't got your balance all the way down. You might stumble and fall a little bit, but I guarantee you, through commitment and through perseverance and through consistency, you're going to be able to walk, and you're going to hold your head up, and you're going to start experiencing that success. You're going to gain traction.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Now, coming back to the main theme for tonight, post-incarceration syndrome.
Yes, sir.
When people hear of posting, because I can tell you, when I first saw the article, it was shared in a group that I'm a part of. That the article where you were interviewed, I read that first.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then I went searching for you. And then I saw your video. When prior to that, I cannot say that I have heard of post-incarceration syndrome.
Right.
So when people hear of post-incarceration syndrome moving forward,
right,
what is it that you hope first is triggered in them, and then secondly, their course of action would be? What is it your hope for those people who have never heard of it?
I would like people to gather all the information necessary, right? And be able, if they think that their loved ones struggle with that, then sit down, look at some videos together. Everybody don't want to read. You can go right online and look at post-incarceration syndrome. You can go right on YouTube and get the videos. Right there, clear, plain as day. And it took that for me. So I can only tell you, not from a theoretical standpoint, not a bunch of hypotheticals, but from my own personal desire to find out what was wrong with me. I sought out the information. It's right there on YouTube. Not only is it set up in a clinical sense, but you have testimonials from people who have struggled adjusting once they've gotten out of prison. And you're going to be able to relate to it if you did any time in prison. So seek the information out. And then for family members, seek out support groups. They have support groups, and they have that information available on the internet and on YouTube. And so be patient, and let's realize, right, that these are not people who are monsters. These are people who struggle with mental issues and not mental health issues as characterized in the most way. Like if you go to sleep, they finna just kill everybody. It's not like that.
Right.
This is PTSD, right? This is treatable. This is manageable, and people can get on top of this, and they can move forward with their lives in the best way possible, financially, socially, intimately, and in every other area of people activity.
Right. Mataka.
Yep. Yes, sir, brother.
I'm going to have to bring you back.
Whatever you need, brother.
Because this is not a one-time type of discussion.
Whatever you need.
The program that is developing that has been developed by the Missouri Department of Mental Health. Are you directly involved in that?
With you. I was directly involved in the advocacy, right? I was the primary advocate that connected the people through conversation, right? That allowed them to say, okay, this is a real thing. So when I came to him, right, this is how I came to him. I came to him with my information. I didn't come and just say, hey, y'all, I'm struggling with some stuff and I don't know what's going on. I came to them breaking down adverse childhood experiences. I came to them breaking down the symptoms of PTSD. I got a DSM-5 right now Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Illness. I got it right now. I studied trauma and stress-related illnesses. So when I talk to the people at the Department of Mental Health, I put forth all my evidence by way of clinical information and breaking my personal experience down through that information. And they was like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. And so they advocated as a result of my advocacy. And then they came up with the training manual. But I wanted to just say this real quick though, brother. On another note, let me just show you something that's going on. So you have, and I want to connect you to this brother. His name is Demetrius Woods. He got a lot going on right now, and I'm gonna give you his information tomorrow, so that way you all can get together. I just want to make people aware of this before I go. So you got a brother who had been sentenced up under them harsh drug laws from the 90s, right? And they revised, the Missouri legislators changed the law, right, which made the sentence more lenient because they were starting to shift the paradigm. And so he said that, okay, since you all have started to change the law, the people who were sentenced up under the old law should get the benefit of the revision because there's nothing stopping it from being retroactive.
Right.
He challenged it. They released him pending the Supreme Court outcome, Missouri Supreme Court. So he got out in 2016 or 17. Let me tell you what he did since he got out. The man has started a couple of businesses. That means he employs people. He pays taxes in the community. He goes around and he shares his story with young people in hopes to guide them down the right path. And he's impacted the community in a positive way.
Yes.
2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court made a ruling against him, and they're trying to lock him back up.
You've got to be kidding.
The man, no, sir, brother. No, sir. So listen, I'm going to connect you with him because he need to get on her as soon as possible to tell you his story. Man, it's a phenomenal story. This is a personal guy. This is my personal friend. So not only that, not only do I know that he's doing positive things in the community, we've done them together. We've been a part of programs together. So I want to be able to connect you with him. And I just wanted to make people aware that whenever you're ready to set that up, man, it's a phenomenal story that's going to make you say, oh, my God, wow. So at what point, right, after a person is released, pending a Supreme Court decision, and everything about their life reflects rehabilitation, which is the ultimate objective, hence the term correctional system, to correct. Right. After this
although
life
it
is
needs
corrected,
correction.
right? Absolutely. After
Yeah.
this life is corrected, right, and this man is on the right path, what's the purpose of sending him back to prison?
Right. To
To
say
me,
what?
that's bloodthirsty.
That's the
bloodthirsty.
business of prison, as far as I'm concerned.
And so is it okay if I, connect you all maybe in the next day or two?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Yes, sir. Whatever you need me to do, man, whenever you need me back on, whatever you need to talk about, like if I have the ability to explain it or if I, studied it, I will share as much as I can. And I definitely appreciate the opportunity.
Well, listen, this
sir.
whole concept of post-incarceration syndrome,
Yes, sir.
I have come across many things. And I have to be honest, this one was new to me. And to have you coming and sharing of your personal experience with it, even the fact that you only recently recognized it within yourself, that you...
Man, Erica said the other day, that's the first time you ever said you got PTSD. She just said it the other day.
Mm-hmm.
She just said it. She said that's the first time. And she was referring to when I said it in the recent past.
Yeah.
And so that is, and when I reflect back in my mind, I was like, yeah, you got that. Yeah, you got that. There's definitely a connection there, but I never verbalized it. That was, I think, the first time that I actually verbalized it.
Well, they say the first step to recovery is acknowledgement, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And so I want to be clear. I don't want to paint this horrific picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
That post-incarceration syndrome is a death sentence for relationships and a person is not going to be able to get out and adjust and do this, that, and the other. You have people who operate with post-incarceration syndrome who have relationships that are not abusive and destructive, who are out here working. However, you're only getting a measure of that person. So if we can start identifying some of those other things that impede them from being their full self, then the person that you think is a good person, once they are treated for these things, they move beyond good and become great.
Yes. Yes. We're talking to one such person right now, because this that you are doing is truly phenomenal, and I appreciate love that you could take the time out and share with us.
Yes, sir.
And
yes, sir.
Like the person just put in the stew pot, thank you for your transparency and for sharing this much needed information.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you need me, let me know, brother. And I got you. And I'm going to connect you with the brother. I got you. And I'm going to connect you with the brother tomorrow. I'm going to give him your information if that's okay.
Oh,
and
yes.
I'm going to have him reach out to you.
Please do. Please do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because these conversations, these conversations, these discussions are what is necessary in our community to help our community grow. And I don't see color when I say community. I'm not talking about just the black community, because the white community needs to grow also. They do what they do because of lack of knowledge. And we fear what we don't know.
Absolutely.
And hence comes problems with individuals. And
Absolutely.
my mantra that anybody that goes on kevinstew.com, one of the first things you see is having acceptance through enlightenment. That came from the word hate. You take the first letter of each of those words.
Oh, I see that. I like that, brother. That's an acronym. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Having acceptance through enlightenment. I like that. That's phenomenal.
And typically, when we don't like something, it's because we fear it. And when we become knowledgeable of that thing, it's not that scary anymore. The first time we ride a bicycle, we're afraid we're going to fall. The first time we ride that same bicycle without hands. Look at me. No hands. I'm riding this bicycle.
Right. Right.
It's such a liberating feeling. We don't fear the bicycle anymore.
Right. Yep. And it gives you the skills and the confidence to be able to do stuff that you once feared.
Yes.
Yep.
And
I agree.
We would fear individuals that claim PTSD because we would think, oh, they're gonna go off at any time, because we don't know. Post-incarceration syndrome is no different, and the fact that it has that word incarceration in there, that's another level of fear.
Yep, you're right, brother. You're right.
So
people scared to death of fear. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
We need to address that fear. We need to enlighten or darkness in whichever way we can. And information is the best way to do that, in my opinion. And what we're doing is sharing information.
Sure.
And I thank you for it.
I appreciate the opportunity, brother. Yes, let me know. Let me know when you need me, and whatever it is that we can talk about. If I have some information to share, I'll definitely do it.
Definitely. Yes, we will talk.
Yes, sir. I'm going to connect you with the brother tomorrow, and hopefully you all can do something soon, and you can listen to his story, because it's phenomenal, and we can just see what we can do to help him by bringing awareness to his situation.
Well, I'm all in.
All right.
So thank you once again.
Thank you, brother, for the opportunity. You got my number. Call me and let me know what's up.
If individuals listening to this broadcast, whether live or they go back to the site in the archives and pull up the show, and they want to get in touch with you, is there a way that they can do that?
So you can get me through my Gmail at Mataka, Mataka Askari @gmail.com. And my Facebook is the same way, Mataka Askari, minus the gmail.com.
Right.
And so what I'm going to do sometime soon, though, is I wanted to set up a Facebook page specifically devoted to post-incarceration and dealing with that stuff. And so I'll be
Nice.
doing that. Hopefully I can get some help from the brother and the sister, the Brunos, that are in Houston, Texas. And I'm definitely going to hook you up with her because, like, there's so much, they've been on top of this for a long time, brother, and they have more
Right, right.
experience in that area than me. And I would definitely, she has a book and support groups and everything. And so I will connect her with you, and then we're going to try to challenge this and tackle it and develop the skills and the strategies to be able to be effective in addressing it as a community.
One of my broadcast platforms is based in Texas, WGLRO,
Okay.
broadcast out of Texas. So
Okay.
yeah, it would be good to connect with them also. And
Yes, sir.
Richard Miles, who I would
Yeah, yeah,
the very
yeah.
first individual that I had spoken to that had anything to do with incarceration and coming out and making a difference. He has Miles of Freedom, recognized
Right.
by CNN. You know, he is in Houston also. So
Oh man, we about to, yeah.
there
That's what's
there are
up.
lots of connections to be made because there's a lot of work to
Okay.
be done.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
You have a good night. Get some rest.
Thank you, brother. Yes, I got to go to
Tomorrow's
work in the
another day.
morning and I get up early.
Oh yeah,
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
my pleasure.
All right. Peace.
Take care, bro.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mataka Askari. You heard it from him directly. We're a little bit over our time, and what a show this has been. What a presentation. Don't let it stop right here. Pardon me, I have a little bit of itching in the throat. Don't let it stop here. We have a lot to share. We have a lot to learn. Let's go out and learn. Let's continue our journey to get the knowledge. Let's do all we can to share the knowledge. Let's educate each other. I'm going to leave with just one song for musical therapy. I won't even, I'll play the whole song. I want to say a happy Earth Date to Miss Joanna Marie. And I'm going to close out tonight with her rendition of Maybe We Can Try Again. But before I do that, let me quickly just say thank you to my segment sponsors. I mentioned Pulsey Media at the beginning of the show. Thank you to Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands. Althea is a licensed massage therapist operating out of Broad County, North Miami-Dade, and South Palm Beach counties. You just give her a call. She comes to you. 954-655-9000 is her number. She brings her table and her Healing Heavenly Hands, and she gets to work. Only requirement is that you get off the table when she is done. So thank you, Althea. And Reggae Global Entertainment, providing a myriad of services, especially in the entertainment field. Big ups to them at Reggae Global Entertainment. They operate as a booking agent. They do tour management, press releases, copyrights, publishing, trademarks. And you can give them a call at 954-998-8034. And this last segment was brought to you courtesy of GMAT Music Solutions, bringing your events to life. They provide sound, light, and stage production services, bands, DJs, musicians, singers, you name it. They can take care of it for you. Thanks, GMAT Music Solutions. You can reach out to them, 754-307-GMAC. That's 754-307-4622. Or connect with them, gmatmusicsolutions.com, or on Instagram. look them up. All right. So this is how I bid you adieu. Tomorrow is Real Talk Wednesday, also known as Marlon's favorite night shift show. I struggled with doing tonight's show tomorrow night, you know, because of the topic that we're addressing, but it's a health issue. Let's recognize that. Our mental health is a part of our overall health. Let's do all we can to have optimal health. Get the knowledge, share the knowledge, change the narrative. Yeah, exactly that. Thank you. Potter 25. Thank you very much. All right. This is how I get out of here. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you wherever you are in the world. From right here in South Florida, I say good night.
I want your body next to mine, baby. Yeah. Ooh. I've been staring at your photograph, wondering where you're at today. I've been hanging by the telephone, hoping that you'll call home and stay. More talks, more feeling close to me. I wanna be close to you. I didn't know you needed some roses, some romance, a little candlelight, slow dance. That's not how it's been. Maybe we can try again. Try, yeah. Maybe we can try again. All the days gone by, and I'm wondering what I couldn't see. Yeah, baby. I could search the whole world over and never find what you have always given me. I told you I needed more time, more space, more freedom, free to do. Go and what you wanna do. I gave you no roses, no romance, no candlelight, no slow dance. That's just how it's been. Ooh, maybe we can try again. Try, yeah. Maybe we can try again. Try, oh, maybe we can try again.
Being in the moment is priceless. Consider the ability to share that moment. If you can video it, you can broadcast it. And Pulse E-Media Group has the tools you need. Weddings, birthdays, funerals, graduations, church services, parties, seminars, you name it. Pulse E-Media Group can provide you with a secure medium controlled by you to broadcast your event. Contact us at www.pulsemediagroup.com for more information. Pulse E-Media Group, when being in the moment is priceless.